This wedding saw a situation develop that I could hardly credit. My in-laws, some hint of their own, had even become the object of a certain amount of underhand, baseless talk among my guests. To my shock, they then loudly burst out, "So now you're married. Now that you want to become a true member of our new family, aren't you going to have to earn the money and work with goals?" They demanded that I give them an additional $5,000 a month, dubbing what had been uttered by my father-in-law. The room grew strangely silent, and I was left speechless at their insolence, feeling my own face turn white with shock. Lucky for me, my father then came up to the microphone. His firm words made the situation a relief apart from that one anxious moment. "My name is Betty Rachel, now 33 years old. My boyfriend, we call him Steph for short, is a 35-year-old that I met through friends anxious about how long I have been single. After my mother died young, my father took on the dual role of both parents. His faith in providing for me was so real. This loss so very much hurt me that I stopped showing my feelings, and very rarely had a source close romantic relationship. Even though Stephen was the kind of person you can rely on to get things done, and take the blame if nobody else, does he is always a gentleman. Then a tree fell on me and caused me to wake up. His constant support and kindness enabled me to soften up. To make him more special, mine was my happiness when I woke up in the morning. He is a tall 35 years old, and I am 33. So when he proposed, it felt like moving from one natural stage to another. Stephen had always been a kind and thoughtful man. He was there to give me support and encouragement when I needed it most, saying, "Don't worry. Believe in me, and if something makes you feel uncomfortable, then wouldn't it be enough for me to be there with kindness till you get well? Betty, I love you. Just count upon me." It was thanks to these promises that he would give me the pleasant emotion of being happy that warmed my heart with the both enveloping, kindly radiance of his words over mine. I wanted him to have this all too. When I told my father the good news, the first thing he did was cry. "Wow, Betty, now after all these years you're finally getting married." "I'm so happy for you," he said. I teased him about being sentimental, and we had a heart-to-heart conversation which finally revealed a deep-seated fear within him. What if I never found a husband? It was a moving moment that demonstrated how much he cared. I thanked my dad with the utmost sincerity, as a person who grew up with him alone. Now we know that their wedding will be a day taxing for both of us emotionally, probably with, given my inherent nature to weep, Stephen's even more tears. Stephen and I were too busy. In addition to steering our wedding preparations, we tried to fit every work commitment we had into our free hours, even going on a tight 3-week tour of Northeast China and being there for a business dinner every night. It was exhausting, but we kept our spirits up. There was a special moment on the horizon, meeting Stephen's parents for the first time. Having met my father not long after he proposed, Stephen arranged for me to meet his parents at last. Scheduling conflicts and all that sort of thing later, which delayed this long-awaited introduction to be sure. Anyway, a trip was planned. As we walked toward his parents' house, I felt a surge of nervousness, but Stephen was fast to comfort me. "Don't be uneasy. My parents are really good people," he said, reassuring me and helping to settle my anxieties. For this was the start of a significant new stage in our life together. When I rang the doorbell of Stephen's family home, it was his mother who answered. "Mom, I'm back," he greeted her cheerfully, receiving a warm smile in return. "Have you really come home? Stephen, that makes me so happy," she rejoiced. As her son amiably engaged her in friendly banter, I introduced myself courteously. "It's good to meet you. My name is Betty, and I'm Stephen's fiancée." She mildly changed her tone with me. lowering the volume from the voice that spoke with cheerfulness to Stephen and dropping her smile. "Oh, you're Betty," she noted, giving me a thorough going-over that felt closer to judgment than greeting. She then led us into the parlor, where she continued to put on airs. "Betty, I would like to know what you have to offer. Stephen is our treasure and only child. If you are to marry him, you must be a fitting wife. Are you worthy?" she demanded, her voice sharp, making the question an interrogation. I had never expected that kind of hostile, bitter feeling from my future mother-in-law and couldn't find a reply. "You will join us," she told me. "Are you ready for it?" The press questioned the tone of her words. I wasn't married into any royal or renowned family after all. Did I owe such a great commitment just because I was marrying her son? I reflected on my answer, trying to think of something to say. But she would have none of my silence and exclaimed impatiently, "When I ask you a question, answer at once. You are so ungracious." Her voice developed in intensity, demanding an immediate response. Despite feeling numbed, I mustered, "I hope that Stephen and I can assist one another through our marriage." But this was still no good. "That's a knave thing to say," she replied. "You are not just going along with one another. Taking care of Stephen is your job as a wife. In this case, his very life is dependent on you," she criticized cruelly. It was at this moment that Stephen's father, who had been quietly watching the exchange, stepped in. "Come on, dear," he said in mild remonstrance. Turning to me, he apologized. "Sorry about that, Betty. You must have been completely taken aback by what my wife just said, over, in an attempt to balance things with a stolid countenance." As I fought to keep my cool, I reminded myself that Stephen's mother was fiercely protective of him. It was very likely just her testiness speaking out of turn in that case. Just at that moment, Steve's brother came into the room. He showed no emotion on his face as he moved. The mere sight of him calmed everyone. It was a brief respite. However, this calm vanished again when he, with a disarming smile, sided with what his mother had just said. "What my wife said is true. Yet most of all, what is worrying is that you are from a single-parent family," he stated. "Why?" I was perplexed. "A single parent doesn't have a good public image. Aren't we justified in saying that she, someone with such a background, shouldn't be the wife of our only son?" He said, "Hold on a minute." I interrupted, unable to let his words go unchallenged. What's wrong with being raised by one parent? My father struggled very hard to raise me by himself. I have always been very thankful for my roots and proud of my father. Just because I was raised by one parent does not make me any less valuable. They persisted in their argument. Because you were missing one parent, you couldn't have learned how to be a good wife, do housework, etc., they said. I helped my father with lots of housework anyway. And I'm also pretty good at cooking, so please don't say that. Although I rebutted firmly, Stephen's mother disregarded my words and finished. "I can agree to your marrying Stephen, but you must agree in turn to give us everything because we are Stephen's parents. Can you promise that?" Her request stunned me. From a position close to his mother asked aloud, "Here, since you came all the way here to request a marriage with a fine gentleman of our family, you surely know what should be done." "You upon making me explain further," he cut in to make things clear that your future in-laws dominated the hours of conversation and left little room for my own point of view. I went over this conversation in my mind and came to realize the extent to which it had really bothered me that night. The evening had brought about thoughts of anxiety for our future family history, thoughts I had avoided up until now. Feeling weighed down by our recent visit to see Stephen's parents, I felt it was important to discuss my concerns with him. "Stephen, do your parents always treat guests like what I encountered today?" I queried, half hoping for some moral support. The question had no effect on Stephen's small smile. "What's that got to do with it?" he asked in confusion, struggling to convey my meaning. "Well, the way your parents spoke to me and the words they spoke," I said. "Oh, really? They were just discussing," he answered in a way that seemed indifferent. I understood that Stephen's parents were caring for their son's future, but I thought their conduct excessive. I know your parents worry so much," I told him in mild protest, "but they really care too much." "Really? Why?" he asked. What they said was right. His voice was as if he almost said. "Besides, they're arranging for us to get married now, so forget it altogether." What he said made me worry about it more. He just seemed more in line with what his parents thought than with recognizing my feelings. Stephen sensed this and took me in his arms. "Betty, you have no need to worry like this." Then with his words, he seemed not completely to get my point. "The folks are a little upset, that's all. It's their only son getting married. It's going to be all right. You don't have to think about every detail. I reckon they just want us to be together, as they are." "That's why they were a bit fierce," he added. "Oh," I replied doubtfully. Stephen seemed to feel it was only fair that his parents should demand so much of him, but I couldn't help thinking this wasn't right for him to look down on me just because I'd been brought up by a single parent. I didn't think that anyone who held such views really deserved to be close partners with us. It is our wedding, and we ourselves must be the central figures. How they give or withhold their consent really has nothing to do with it. Even though I was still upset, unfortunately, my head couldn't be beaten. Ruminating over his parents' opinion then seemed unavailing. Finally, I believe that one of the happiest days in life is a wedding day. Our relatives, friends, colleagues, and even bosses filled the venue. Walking down the aisle with my father, who has cared for me lovingly, I felt all kinds of emotions. Stephen and I spoke our vows and agreed to give a ring. The whole room then burst into applause. Despite hardship, this was our way, our only road, and I resolutely, yet gently, steered myself toward the world outside. When Stephen and I walked down the aisle together as a couple, the full realization that I was actually marrying him for real penetrated me, joy flooding through my entire being. As we entered the venue, the festival and video plays of our life together gave a human touch to celebration. It was indeed a memorable time, because they greeted friends who I had failed to meet for a long time, and congratulations filled the space with heartfelt joy. Although there remained some doubts in my heart about Stephen's parents, I felt so relieved, and quite honestly happy I had married him. After the ceremony, we planned to register our marriage officially. At that moment, we would live together as husband and wife. In the happiness of that day, I enjoyed every minute. But as the celebration proceeded, and it was time to begin greeting guests in earnest, an odd feeling stole over me. Stephen's parents, with us in line, looked anything but stable on their feet and had deep red faces, obvious signs that they had drunk too much. A few relatives quietly asked if they were all right. It was rather embarrassing, but we had to get on with the ceremony's ending. Just as the microphone was handed to us, Stephen's mother suddenly grabbed my hand and dragged me from Stephen. She then shouted at me with such force that all her words seemed to drop like heavy stones. "Listen here, Betty. After this wedding, you're going to be giving yourself to us in full. Get ready, because we are going to give you hell." There were sounds of conversation among the guests, and some of them laughed, thinking this was a joke. So with the situation growing worse, Stephen's father seized the microphone and scolded my dress. "Betty, how can you put on such a dress? It doesn't suit you at all, dear." Always the traditionalist, his mother readily chimed in her assent. The whispering among guests grew louder, with more shades of concern. I turned to Stephen, my eyes a mixture of disbelief and pleading, hoping that he might step in and prevent his father's impolite interruptions. This situation demanded that even if only for me alone, he had to stand up and defend the dignity of our union. In the midst of our wedding reception, a certain moment exposed the linkages within my new family. Stephen's parents, already quite drunk, started to make demands on me. If I wanted truly to merge into their family, they said, "How can you prove belonging? After you get married, you have to give us a few thousand every month and all your bonuses." I was shocked by their greed, I heard myself saying. We interrupting parents with parents continued to lay responsibility for me that exhausted to memorize my artisan bunker hour ago. My father, seeing my predicament, grabbed the microphone back from them, and then firmly but respectfully said, "Kind of. Stop it, both of you. Do you think showing no shame, and despite his unassuming style my father, Stephen's parents still, if it would be offensive from them, won't let up see that single parents come to nothing. He made them for just about many days." Their bold rebukes cut me deeply thief, but father was unaffected in his response. "You people are something worse yet. And you did not go along with Li Cheng because he is a single father." Then he added a twist that changed the entire tone of this present exchange. "I never thought that people like you would work for President Roy. President Roy is a man with a good reputation, so I assumed his subordinates must be worthy of some respect." The reference to President Roy hit home for my father-in-law, whose company was a client of my father's, and who counted President Roy as an old friend. After all presidents out of wedlock, and how many single parents can you say something like your children were raised up? He continued then, and seeing the summit in its glory, added even higher to its pinnacle. As my father-in-law watched the horrified faces of his relatives, the room suddenly changed dynamics. No longer were they tall and confident. My father was standing up there on the platform next to the microphone, now looking small and scared. "I am sorry, sir. Please don't tell this incident to President Roy," he begged pleadingly, now collapsing at a 180-degree change on his knees from where he had previously proclaimed his loyalty to President Roy and fallen over prone on the ground like an overripe melon at just the slightest touch. This point was a turning point for me, revealing both the true nature of Stephen's family and resilience, with connections vested in my own roots. This awareness was most painful and yet needed as I considered our future in the midst of conversations among all our friends throughout the humming hall. Objection to my plan of action thus, the atmosphere was overpowered by a sense of failure expressed in Stephen's body language. Guests caught between curiosity and enjoyment, they began to record what was happening right in front of them. Father stood stoically by my side, unyielding. No matter how much you apologize, you cannot take back their words. Your father asked if I wanted to go over there with him, and without looking back, I followed into the distance. I never saw it again. Measures stopped taking the mic from Stephen. I stood up there on stage with all my authority, a reckless renegade who had grabbed control 3 minutes previously. "Thank you for the great entertainment, but there will be no marriage." I concluded my words with resolve, fixing them first on Stephen, then his parents, and finally everybody present. "I shall also make sure to return all the gifts and contributions you made to get me here, with acknowledgement." Having made these pronouncements, I took my leave at the same time that father did. In front of me as I left, Stephen had his parents with him. They wore an expression somewhere between frightened and broken-hearted. Behind, as in every other such case, both the people he knew and people he recognized gathered round to form groups where they anxiously talked in low voices. After a few days, my decision was to return the money and gifts. I explained this to the few guests who had seen me do it, and they all took sides. The decision was courageous. They praised both my father and me for our honesty or even leadership in confronting such a difficult problem. Soon after the wedding glow spread into every corner of society, his colleagues naturally talked about the event, thereby casting he and his kin were thrown in an unfavorable light. Not only did this gossip ruin Stephen's reputation, but it also left him with no one to turn to, cast as a man without character by his own people. Only embarrassed and unable to show his face to any at work, Stephen resigned from the company. His father also felt the repercussions of the incident. When the basis of the case had been discovered through grapevine news within the company, you made a strong response. Stephen's father was demoted and transferred to a very remote branch of the company, a clear downshift that fully expressed the company's attitude on integrity and respect. As for Stephen's family, their actions at the wedding caused them to become more and more isolated from their community and extended family. Although this was all regrettable, it was of their own direct making, a clear reminder that actions do have consequences, and sometimes those results can be very hard to foresee. But in the meantime, life goes on with lessons learned. Someday Sudama shall embark upon life anew. Since the dramatic termination of my planned wedding, it is at this time that I have used to create a closer relationship with my parents. We have spent increasing quantities of quality time together, and has enhanced my feeling for everything they have done for me. From out of the blue, one day he started a deep conversation that forced me to think. "Betty, are you willing to take over my business?" he asked, with hope and a hint of earnestness mingling in his eyes. "When you was taking me in that direction, did you refer to, 'Why don't you aim high and become president of my company?'" The suggestion was a step forward that seemed, however, reassuring in his mind. "I'll do my best," I replied to him with a jumble of excitement and nervousness swirling inside of me. From that moment on, I resolved to concentrate on advancing my career and put that part of my personal life aside for the time being. I wanted to show myself and my father that I could achieve, and perhaps one day be the same kind of successful leader as he is. Right now, I've thrown myself wholeheartedly into my father's company. A business is giving and worthwhile, though it presents frequent challenges. I will definitely seize the chance to do this kind of work. But thinking back on the wedding disaster, it is clear that Stephen's in-laws were not to be unreasoned with. Some people should have made stupid people their hobby and left conducting the ceremony for couples alone. Fortunately, as the marriage was ultimately never officially registered, I got through a legally binding mistake. Now, without any family commitments of marriage and in-law complications to complicate matters, free to pursue my goal of getting ahead in life. It's liberating to think that from all that mess I have come up with a clear plan for my future. I eagerly await the possibilities that leading the company holds out. I wish myself all the best and hope that there is something valuable here for anyone who hears it. Thanks for sticking with me. And if you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to my free blog. My next video will be up soon, and you know I look forward to sharing updates and thoughts with you there.